At the hospital waiting for my son's surgery results, my sister texted, "Dad's 60th tonight. Don't bring your kid, he'll ruin the vibe." I replied, "Understood." 2 hours later, the surgeon said my son was stable. I made one phone call when they arrived at the restaurant and saw the bill. I need to start at the beginning, because if I don't lay this out properly, none of what happened afterward will make sense. My son Oliver is 6. He has a condition called tetralogy of Fallot, a heart defect he was born with. We knew about it from the prenatal scans. When he was 4 months old, he had his first surgery, a temporary shunt to help blood flow to his lungs. It bought us time, the doctors said. But 3 months ago, his cardiologist sat us down and explained that Oliver needed the full repair now. Not eventually, not if symptoms worsened. Now. His oxygen saturation levels were dropping, and waiting any longer would be dangerous. The surgery was scheduled for Thursday, March 14th. My husband Greg took time off work. We arranged everything: childcare for our daughter Emma, who's 9, backup plans for the recovery period, a folder full of medical directives. I barely slept the week before. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Oliver's small body on an operating table, his chest cracked open, machines breathing for him. My family knew about the surgery. Of course they knew. I'd told my parents and my sister Vanessa back in December when we first got the date. My mother had made appropriate sympathetic noises. My father had nodded gravely and said something about modern medicine being miraculous. Vanessa had texted me a heart emoji and "thinking of you guys." But here's the thing about my family: they're not bad people exactly. They're just the kind of people who care more about appearances than substance. My father is a financial advisor who golfs with clients on Saturdays. My mother chairs the local garden club and hosts dinner parties where the silverware has to be arranged just so. Vanessa works in marketing and posts Instagram photos of her pristine apartment with captions about gratitude and balance. I'm the odd one out. I married Greg when I was 23, right out of college, and we moved to a different suburb, only 40 minutes away, but far enough that I wasn't expected at every family gathering. We had Emma a year later, then Oliver 2 years after that. I work part-time as a paralegal. Our house is a 1970s split level with outdated countertops and a yard full of trampled grass and plastic toys. My mother once described my life as comfortable but unremarkable. She didn't mean it as an insult. That's just how she sees things. There are people who matter, who do interesting things and attend interesting events, and then there are people who exist in the background. I've made peace with being background, but Oliver's surgery wasn't background. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever faced. For weeks beforehand, I walked around with this weight in my stomach, this constant low-grade nausea. I researched survival rates and complication statistics until Greg physically took my laptop away. I lay awake at night listening to Oliver breathe through the baby monitor we still kept in his room, even though he was 6, because I needed to hear that steady inhale-exhale. The morning of the surgery, we got to the hospital at 5:30. Oliver was groggy and confused. Emma cried when we left her with Greg's mother. The pre-op area was freezing, one of those industrial medical cold temperatures that seeps into your bones. They gave Oliver a mild sedative, and he got loopy and giggly, which almost made it worse. Then they wheeled him away, and a nurse told us the surgery would take 4 to 6 hours. Greg and I went to the surgical waiting room. It was beige and windowless, with chairs that had thin cushions and wooden armrests. There was a coffee station with powdered creamer and a television playing the morning news on mute. We sat. We didn't talk much. Greg kept refreshing his phone. I stared at the clock. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. "Hey. So Dad's 60th birthday dinner is tonight at Marcello's, 7 p.m. reservation. I know you're dealing with Oliver's thing today, but just FYI, we're keeping it adults only. Don't bring your kid if you come, he'll ruin the vibe. It's a nice place and we want to actually enjoy the evening. Hope you understand." I read it 3 times. The surgeon was, at that exact moment, holding my son's heart in his hands. Oliver was on a bypass machine. There were tubes in his chest. And my sister was texting me about protecting the vibe of a birthday dinner. Greg glanced over. "What's wrong?" I showed him the text. His face went blank, then red. "Are you kidding me?" "She doesn't know any better," I said automatically. It was the same thing I'd been saying my whole life. They don't know any better. They don't mean it. They're just thoughtless. "She knows Oliver's in surgery right now," Greg said. His voice was shaking. "She knows that, and she's worried about him ruining dinner?" I didn't have an answer. The thing is, I wasn't even surprised. Disappointed, maybe. Hurt, definitely. But surprised? No. I texted back. "Understood." That was it. One word. I didn't explain that we obviously weren't coming to dinner. I didn't point out that our son was having open heart surgery. I didn't say anything about how breathtakingly cruel her message was. I just said, "Understood." Then I put my phone on silent and went back to staring at the clock. At 12:15, a nurse came out to give us an update. The surgery was progressing well. No complications so far. Oliver was stable. She'd come back in another hour or 2. At 2:33, the surgeon emerged. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with gray at his temples. He pulled his surgical cap off and smiled, actually smiled, and said, "He did great. We've completed the repair. He's in recovery now." I started crying, not delicate tears, ugly, gasping sobs. Greg put his arm around me, and his hands were shaking too. The surgeon went through the technical details. The repair had gone smoothly. Oliver's heart was functioning well. Barring any unexpected complications, we'd be able to see him in about an hour, once he was stable enough to move to the pediatric cardiac ICU. The surgeon left. Greg and I sat back down, and it was like someone had cut all the strings holding me upright. I slumped in the chair, boneless with relief. Then I thought about my family, about Vanessa's text, about the birthday dinner happening tonight at Marcello's, a steakhouse downtown, the kind of place with cloth napkins and wine lists. And here's the thing, I'd been planning to go to that dinner. Before Oliver's surgery got scheduled, I'd marked it on the calendar, my father's 60th. It was supposed to be important, but they'd made it clear Oliver wasn't welcome. My 6-year-old son, who'd just had his chest sawed open, who'd just had his heart repaired by a surgeon's hands, wasn't welcome because he might ruin the vibe. I pulled out my phone, I opened my contacts, and I made one phone call to the restaurant. "Hi, yes, I need to speak to someone about a reservation tonight under the name Westfield. Lawrence Westfield, 7 p.m. The hostess confirmed the reservation. Party of 8. My parents, Vanessa and her husband Brent, my Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim, and 2 of my father's golf buddies. I'd like to add something special to their evening," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "It's my father's 60th birthday. I want to pre-order their meals and drinks, the full tasting menu, the premium wine pairing, and a bottle of your 2015 Barolo. Also, I'd like to arrange for your pastry chef to create a custom birthday cake. Spare no expense. I want this to be a night he remembers." The hostess sounded delighted. "Of course," she said. "We'd be honored." She ran through the menu options: filet mignon, lobster tail, truffle risotto, foie gras, and I said yes to everything. The wine pairing alone was $90 per person. The Barolo was $450. The custom cake was another $200. "Perfect," I said. "Now I'll give you my card to authorize everything. But here's what I need you to do. Don't tell them it's been pre-ordered. Let them order whatever they want from the menu. Bring everything to the table. Make it a celebration. When they're finished and ask for the check, tell them that Lawrence Westfield's daughter called ahead and arranged everything as a birthday surprise. Tell them the bill has already been taken care of." "How lovely," the hostess said. Wait for their reaction, I continued. Give them a moment to feel relieved, grateful, whatever. Then, and this is important, check your system and discover that the card authorization failed. Bring out the actual itemized bill and explain there was a processing error. They'll need to pay after all. There was a pause. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm not sure I understand. The card I'm about to give you has exactly $500 available on it, I said. It was a prepaid card I'd set up months ago for Oliver's medical expenses, emergency money we kept separate. It will authorize for $500, but the actual bill will be around $4,000. When you run it for the full amount, it will decline, but you won't know that until after they've eaten. Do you understand? Another pause. Longer this time. Ma'am, we can't really. You'll get a $200 cash tip from me right now if you agree to help, I said. I'll Venmo it to you immediately, before the dinner even happens. And if there's any blowback from the table, you can give them my number and tell them to call me directly. This is between me and my family. You're just doing your job processing a payment that didn't go through. I'll need to speak to my manager. Fine, I'll hold. Greg was staring at me. What are you doing? I have no idea, I said honestly. And I didn't. I'd never done anything like this in my life. I'd spent 34 years being the accommodating one, the one who understood, the one who didn't make waves. But something had cracked open in me in that waiting room. Maybe it was the relief. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was just that when you spend 6 hours thinking your child might die, your tolerance for other people's nonsense drops to 0. The manager came on the line. I explained the situation again, a family conflict, a lesson about priorities, a card with limited funds that would authorize initially, but fail on the full charge. I offered $300 cash, Venmo transfer right now for their cooperation. I emphasized that this wasn't fraud. I was genuinely trying to pay. The card just wouldn't cover the full amount. They'd get their money from my family. I just wanted my family to see the bill first. The manager was hesitant, but $300 is $300. He agreed. I hung up. Sent the Venmo payment immediately, Greg's account, so there was proof of my attempt to compensate them. Then I gave the restaurant the prepaid card information over the phone. You're insane, Greg said, but he was almost smiling. Probably, I agreed. We went to see Oliver at 3:45. He was unconscious, intubated, surrounded by machines. But his numbers were good. His oxygen saturation was higher than it had been in months. The nurse said everything looked great. I sat next to his bed and held his hand carefully, so carefully, avoiding the IV line, and I thought about my family sitting down to dinner in a few hours, ordering drinks, laughing, toasting my father, not once asking where I was, not once wondering if Oliver was okay. At 7:52 p.m., my phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:03, my father called. Voicemail. At 8:17, Vanessa called. I almost answered that one. Almost. But I let it ring. At 8:34, my mother called again. This time, I picked up. What did you do? She hissed. I'm at the hospital, I said. Oliver's surgery went well, thanks for asking. Don't play games with me. The restaurant said you pre-ordered our entire meal and then your card declined. We had to split a $4,000 bill between 8 people. Your father is humiliated. Vanessa is in tears. What were you thinking? $4,000. The number hung in the air. I was thinking, I said slowly, that it's interesting how you can call me right now to yell about a restaurant bill, but you didn't call once today to ask about your grandson. Silence. He had open-heart surgery this morning, Mom. He was on the table for 5 hours. And Vanessa texted me during the surgery, while the surgeon was literally cutting into his chest, to tell me not to bring him to dinner because he'd ruin the vibe. That's not, she didn't mean, I know exactly what she meant, and now you know what $4,000 feels like. That's what we're going to owe in medical bills even after insurance. That's what this year has cost us. But you didn't ask about that. You didn't offer to help. You just wanted to make sure your party went smoothly. You had no right. I had every right. You want to know what I did today? I sat in a waiting room for 6 hours not knowing if my son would survive. I held his hand while he was scared and confused. I watched them wheel him into an operating room. And your daughter, my sister, thought the most important thing to communicate to me was that my child wasn't fancy enough for your celebration. My mother was crying now. You've always been like this, always so dramatic, always making everything about you. This isn't about me, I said. It's about Oliver. It's about the fact that not one of you called to check on him. Not one of you asked if we needed anything. You just assumed we'd show up to perform our roles, smile, toast, pretend everything's fine. Well, I'm done pretending. I hung up. Greg was looking at me with something like awe. I've never heard you talk to your mother like that. I've never had a reason to. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I put it on Do Not Disturb and slipped it into my pocket. We spent the night in Oliver's room. He woke up around midnight, groggy and in pain, but the nurses managed it. He didn't understand where he was or why he hurt. I sang to him, badly, off-key, until he fell back asleep. Update 1. The next morning the messages started rolling in. Vanessa, I can't believe you did that. You embarrassed all of us. Dad's friends were there. Uncle Jim had to put it on his credit card. How could you be so selfish? My father, we need to talk about your behavior. This is unacceptable. My Aunt Carol, I don't know what's gotten into you, but that stunt last night was childish and cruel. I didn't respond to any of them. Oliver was awake more often now, and every moment I had went to him. Greg brought Emma to visit in the afternoon, supervised brief, because they're strict about ICU visits, and she cried when she saw all the tubes and wires. But Oliver smiled at her, weak and tired, and said, I'm okay, Em. That night, after Emma left, Greg's phone rang. It was his mother asking if we needed anything, groceries, help with meals, someone to sit with Oliver so we could both sleep. I almost cried again. Not from sadness this time. On Saturday, Oliver was moved out of the ICU to a regular pediatric room. His color was better. He was eating popsicles. The surgeon came by and said everything looked excellent. We'd probably be discharged Monday or Tuesday. My phone was still on Do Not Disturb, but I checked it periodically. Greg also showed me some of the messages coming to his phone. Apparently my family was in full crisis mode. Vanessa had posted a vague Instagram story about toxic family members and setting boundaries. My mother had called Greg's mother to complain. My father had sent Greg a long email about respect and responsibility. None of them had asked about Oliver. On Sunday, I finally turned off Do Not Disturb. There were 43 missed calls, 62 text messages. I scrolled through them, and it was like reading a script. Anger, defensiveness, justification, a few half-hearted attempts at guilt-tripping. One message from Vanessa that said, I'm sorry if my text came across wrong, but you have to understand we wanted an adult evening. I'm sorry if. Not, I'm sorry I said that. Not, I'm sorry for the timing. I'm sorry if you took it the wrong way. I wrote one message and sent it to the family group chat. Oliver is recovering well. We'll be home in a few days. For those asking about the restaurant bill, consider it a gift. I hope you enjoyed your meal. I won't be attending future family events for the foreseeable future. I need space, and my children need to be around people who actually care about their well-being. Then I muted the chat. Vanessa tried calling. My mother tried calling. I ignored both. On Monday afternoon, Oliver was discharged. The drive home was slow and careful, Greg taking every turn like we were transporting glass. Oliver slept in his car seat, and Emma held my hand in the back seat, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, but close. Final update. We've been home for 2 weeks now. Oliver is healing beautifully. The incision is closed and starting to fade. He gets tired easily and we're watching him like hawks, but the cardiologist says his heart is functioning better than it has in years. My family has been quiet. My mother sent a card, actual snail mail, which is very her, with a check for $500 and a note that said, "For Oliver's recovery, no apology, no acknowledgement of what happened, just money, because money is how they solve problems." I deposited the check. We'll use it for his follow-up appointments. Vanessa sent a text last week. "Can we talk?" I responded, "Not yet." She hasn't pushed. Here's what I've realized. I spent my whole life trying to fit into a family that didn't have space for me. I twisted myself into shapes I thought they'd find acceptable. Quiet, undemanding, grateful for scraps of attention. And my kids were learning that. Emma was learning that some people matter more than others. Oliver was learning that his existence was an inconvenience. I can't teach them that. The morning after the restaurant incident, when I was sitting in Oliver's hospital room watching him sleep, I thought about what I wanted my kids to know about family. Not the family you're born into, necessarily, but the family you build. The people who show up, the people who ask how you're doing and actually listen to the answer. Greg's mother has visited 3 times. She brings meals and sits with Oliver so I can shower. My coworker Janet sent flowers and a gift card for meal delivery. Our neighbor Tom mowed our lawn without being asked. That's family. My sister was worried about the vibe. I don't regret what I did. Maybe I should. Maybe it was petty or vindictive or cruel, but I needed them to feel something, even if it was just the shock of an unexpected bill. I needed them to sit in discomfort for 5 minutes and think about someone other than themselves. I don't know if it worked. I don't know if they learned anything. Honestly, I don't think they did. But I learned something. I learned that I'm done apologizing for taking up space. I'm done pretending that casual cruelty is just thoughtlessness. I'm done teaching my kids that blood relation means you have to accept whatever scraps people throw you. Oliver is thriving. Emma is happy. Greg and I are exhausted but okay. And my family? They're welcome to reach out when they're ready to be actual family. The kind that shows up, that cares, that asks about your 6-year-old's heart surgery without needing to be reminded. Until then, we're good. Sometimes family isn't about who raised you or who shares your DNA. It's about who chooses to stand beside you when things get hard. The people who truly love you will never ask you to make yourself smaller to fit their comfort. In the end, protecting your children's sense of worth is more important than maintaining relationships that cost you your peace. We're moving forward with the people who actually see us, and we're teaching our kids that they deserve nothing less than genuine love.